Hi there, everyone. I'm Reverend Wendy Silvers, and this is a very special series on regenerative farming. I have interviewed Gabe Brown and Marnie Thompson, and today I am speaking with Kristine Root. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Kristine Root serves as the Chief Marketing Officer at Regenified, where she leads the charge in advancing regenerative agriculture and food systems. With over 20 years of experience in marketing and a dedication to natural and organic category, Kristine is recognized as an advocate for the transformative power of food. Kristine's commitment to the agricultural community is evident through her efforts to amplify the voices of farmers and ensure transparency from farm to table. Beyond her role at Regenified, Kristine's influence is felt industry-wide. She has served on numerous boards on promoting good food practices, underlining her dedication to the cause. Known for her dynamic and engaging presence, Kristine is a sought-after speaker at industry events where she shares her expertise and inspires actions. Her thought leadership is also showcased through regular contributions to industry publications, where she champions the importance of regenerative agriculture for a healthier planet. And her strategic insights and innovative campaigns have been pivotal in driving Regenified's mission forward. And help me welcome to the stage Kristine Root.
Thank you for having me today, Wendy. It's great to be here with you.
Oh, it's so good to be here with you. This topic is so near and dear to my heart. Regenerative farming, organic, transparency, good food. As a mom, I think it's unbelievably important to be educated and informed about what's really happening with the food that ends up on our tables and in our children's bodies. So, how did you come to be involved with this particular area?
It's really interesting. I mean, I think when I think back to my life, it actually started in childhood with our own garden. But there's, been a series of events, and I think just throughout my life have gotten me further and further down my own journey into understanding how important food is. In fact, it was when I had my first child that I had already been shopping at a co-op. I had already been buying from local farmers, that I really said, wow, food is way more complex than I ever realized it was. And that I really need to, an apple wasn't an apple wasn't an apple. And there was a lot more to learn about that. And for me, that's been an unfolding of 18 years since that point to get to here. Yeah. And I think it was about 15 years ago. I'd been working as a marketer my entire career. And I said, if I really want to have a positive impact, I don't think there's any place that I can do it more meaningfully than if I commit my career to growing good food. That's ultimately what led me to regenerative and Regenified specifically.
Yes. Well, I want to talk about what, if you can explain to everyone listening and watching, what is Regenified?
Yeah, Regenified is a verification and certification company. At the heart of it, we go out into the field to understand what's happening at the farm level where farmers are farming. We're ground truthing the data on their field by measuring both their practices and then the outcomes of those practices on things like soil organic matter, things like nutrient cycling within the soil, energy capture within the soil, water holding capacity and water cycling through that ecosystem. So we're ground truthing and understanding that those farms who are practicing regeneratively are actually having measured outcomes to benefit their ecosystem. But it actually doesn't stop there, because what we found through science and decades of research is that when you build up the health of that soil, when you build those natural processes of nature's ecosystem function, you actually produce healthier food. It impacts the nutrients of the going into the food that then go to a consumer's plate. And so it starts in the soil, it starts at the ground level, and Regenified is there to ground truth that, capture that data, understand. And when a farm is actually creating outcomes that are measurable around regeneration, that's when they carry the Regenified seal. So Regenified actually has a mark, and it's a circular badge that says certified Regenified. And any products that are grown on a farm that's verified and achieving ecosystem outcomes will carry that mark. So then we follow that ingredient through the supply chain to a shelf. So maybe For example, it could be wheat growing on a field. And that wheat, if it's grown using regenerative practices, having measured outcomes that are producing regeneration, building up soil health and function within the ecosystem, will then go on to the next stage of the gate, which may be a miller. That miller, we would verify the processes that miller has in place to ensure that that grain coming off that farm is the grain that goes into this bag of flour that then goes to a shelf that a consumer can buy. So when you go to the grocery store, you can see that seal and know that you're investing in a product that was raised on a farm that's having measured ecosystem outcomes.
So is Regenified, and forgive me because I'm learning. Is Regenified a data system? Is it an ingredient, or is it something? What exactly is the product?
Yeah, so I think there's multiple products that come out of the verification and certification process, because at one level, it's a seal on a pack that gives consumers trust that they know there's transparency around where that food was grown and how it was grown.
Right.
At the farm level, it's all about data. So we're capturing 65 data points plus soil sampling and nutrient density testing and water holding capacity. So we're capturing hundreds of data points that are ground truthing what's happening on that farm, but the farmer can use that data to make decisions. So understanding how their soil aggregate matter is building, for example, helps them make farm level decisions that help them improve their ecosystem outcomes even further. That data going into, an egg company, for example, who's buying those eggs from the farmer, then that company has data to say, hey, our purchases from our farmers are causing X percent of impact to the planet. We're improving water, we're increasing biodiversity, we're drawing down carbon. Those are all things, tangible metrics that a company can share when they've got that ground truth data coming from the farm level. And then as a consumer, you're not just trusting that it was good enough, that someone did something good somewhere along the supply chain, but you're actually investing in farmers who are taking active measurements, active efforts to create measured outcomes.
And so do you travel to all of the farms, or how does that work to make sure that farmers are adhering to the requirements to be Regenified?
Yep. Every farmer that gets certification through Regenified has an annual boots on the ground verification. So we have a team of soil scientists who go out into the field to capture this data, and they're in the field every year at the farm measuring. They're taking soil samples, they're scooping up shovels of soil, they're bringing out different kinds of tests that they test right there in the field. So the water infiltration rates, for example, they're testing right out in the field, and they're capturing these data points with boots on the ground visits. And they're also observing what they see happening on that farm and within those fields over time. So there's both observation and then there's measured data. And that's happening annually, boots on the ground.
That's wonderful. That's a really wonderful process to make sure that, because I know that with to have a farm that's certified organic, there's a whole process that has to happen. And oftentimes, like at the farmers markets, you'll hear people say, well, we don't have pesticides in our soil, but we can't go through the process of becoming organic.
Yeah, I feel like we're doing our very best to make sure. There's a lot of information we capture, and it takes days. We'll go out to a farm, and depending on the size of the farm, we may be there for 3 days or 5 days or 7 days. And that's a significant amount of time for our team, but also for the farmer. And the farmers are welcome to join us. And we find consistently that farmers do want to. They'd love to go out there in the field and be with that soil scientist, because it's not paperwork. Regenified certification isn't a checklist of yes or no. It's actually getting out there and getting our hands in the soil and understanding what's happening at the ground level. And that provokes lots of conversations. Mm-hmm. So one of our farmers recently said to me, it's almost like a proctology exam, Kristine, but it was so fascinating. And we learned so much about what we were doing and the impact of what we were doing just because of how knowledgeable the soil scientist is. And so some of the things we thought we were doing that were having benefits were actually holding back our progress. But we didn't know that until we had somebody out here who was an expert in this, who was capturing the data and putting together the pieces and helping us understand what our practices are doing and then the effect they have.
That's phenomenal. So once this data is collated, it goes, where does it go?
It goes, so we have a database where we capture all of the data we capture when we're out in the fields, and then it goes back to the farmer. So the farmer who's having us out for the verification, this is their data. It's to empower them, to help them understand where they're at in the journey. We always say regenerative agriculture isn't a destination. It's a lifelong commitment. You're working within nature's ecosystems, within nature's function, and nature is variable one season to the next. And so it's a commitment to understand and working within the context of your environment, within your farm. And this data is there to enable those farmers to make those ongoing choices based on the information that they're getting back. Right? So it starts at the farm level and it goes there. If that farm is working with a brand, that farm can share that information with the brand to share, here's the impact that we're having within our soil. Here's the impact on water cycles, on ecosystem. So that then that data can be passed through the supply chain to help everybody along the journey understand the impact that's being had, so even down to the consumer level. When I'm going to the shelf to purchase a flower, I can purchase a flower knowing that this flower contributed to an increase in biodiversity, that there's more bird species, more insect species available on this farm because there's a high level of crop rotation. There's a bunch of diverse plant species living in this farm. And that's contributing to, we see farms where keystone species are coming back, for example, otters in an ecosystem, or beavers in an ecosystem, where that's because there's life. Life in the soil brings life above the soil. And then I think one of the most exciting pieces as a consumer is that our farms all have access to nutrient testing. So we offer nutrient density testing across all of our farms. And so let's say they are growing wheat, that wheat gets sent into the laboratory for testing, and we're testing it for phytonutrients, fatty acids, macronutrients, to understand the impact of those farming systems on the health of the food. And data we're just starting to compile the data now on what that means, but we're seeing some very exciting data points coming out of that, because it's very similar if you've done any work or shared anything with your guests on gut health, right? The soil is a lot like our gut. It needs all these thriving bacteria and fungi living in the soil to cycle nutrients and to make the magic happen. That's how nature functions. Just like we need all of those microbes in our gut to be able to digest and break down the food and make it bioavailable. So when we see those functioning soils with all of this, healthy microbe colonies, we see more nutrients uptake in the plants, and we see an increase specifically in omega-3s very consistently across the board. And then another very exciting area is phytonutrients. These are all kind of like the micronutrients that enable all sorts of other things in our body. And so we see, off the chart increases in these phytonutrients because of all that cycling within the soil. And so I project that it'll just be a few years' time before consumers can start seeing much more complex narratives around the nutrients in the food they're eating.
I think it's so important with everything that's happening with the GMO, with, the glyphosate. There's another one, and I keep forgetting the pesticide. How do you, forgive me if I sound completely ignorant, but is Regenified kind of a seal of approval?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So that's where I was saying, kind of, we have, what I would say is you look at it from different angles, and there's multiple products, for example. Right. There's the data that's really there to enable the farmer, but it also carries through and it tells a story. At the end, ultimately you go to shelf as a consumer and there's a seal.
Not like the GMO verified.
Yep, it would be similar to what you would see with a GMO verified or a USDA organic. It says certified Regenified, and it has an R in the center of it. And that seal on pack helps you know that this product came from a farm or from multiple farms that are practicing with measured outcomes to create regeneration. Right? That's available right now. You go to the grocery store and you'll see products on shelf with that Regenified seal coming from farms who are practicing regeneratively.
That's wonderful. And what is the I know what I heard you say is it'll take a couple of years for people to really, is it to understand it? Is it to reach? I mean, it would be so wonderful to have this kind of measuring system happening all the time and for all farms to be regenerative. And I remember when I spoke with Gabe and then subsequently with Marnie, that the percentage of regenerative farms is still building.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we have an entire system, agricultural system that's built in a very conventional model.
Yeah.
And regenerative is stepping away from that to focus, to shift focus away from yield into profitability, to think about quality over quantity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, and Gabe may have spoken a little bit to this, what we find is that when a farm starts bringing biodiversity into their ecosystem, they're actually producing more than they were ever producing when they were farming a monocrop. But it's because they're farming, they're maximizing the value of that land while building it up. They may be growing their wheat for their, their main crop, but then they may have a winter cover crop that they're grazing off with cattle, for example. And now they have 3 profit centers on there.
Oh, wow.
Right? Rather than one profit center from one crop, but they're building up that biodiversity, they're building up the health of their soil, and they're building their financial resilience because they have more profit centers coming off of the same plot of land, and they're not extracting from it, they're building it. And I think that's very exciting to be able to see that kind of a shift at the farm level, a value proposition within farming.
And how do you navigate big ag with something like this? Because it's a very different cosmology to go for quality rather than quantity.
It does. And I think, all the farmers that I've met in our network are really, some of them are farming on much larger scale. And it's really, farming is a really tough life. Yeah. And it's not getting easier. We've marginalized at the farm level as much as we possibly can, to the point of seeing family farms die. Farms fade away, farms become corporatized because you need volume to be able to get revenue. And when you think about what I had just mentioned at the farm level, a farm being able to instead of focusing on yield as the number one, let's grow one thing and grow as much of it as we possibly can. When you start thinking about how do we take care of this land and produce the healthiest food we possibly can, now we're getting into a conversation about quality. We're getting into a conversation about value and impact of practices. Mm-hmm. And we start seeing, like, say, those stacked enterprises where you've got honey that you're harvesting off of that same land, and you've got cows that you're harvesting and selling meat. You've got grains that you're growing. Maybe, you have all these different layers. You're actually creating much higher revenue centers on the farm. And so it makes it easier for a farm. It is more work to farm those multiple different things, but now you've got an opportunity to bring more people back to the family farm. And so you can see this generational opportunity to pass the family farm on again.
I love that.
We're losing. And so I think when you think about those, when you think about large scale farms, it allows, bigger rural prosperity. It allows for more people to work on the farm again and to rebuild what we used to have in rural America, where we had these thriving rural communities. Now you drive through much of the countryside and you'll see small towns that are, pretty desolate. There's not a lot there because the tractors and the big equipment in a monocrop system take away the people.
Right. Yes, and I remember there was a movie several years ago about, I think it was a particular farming family and what they went through. So I love that. What I love so much about regenerative farming is that it's really giving nature back its dignity. It's giving nature back its normal life cycle instead of putting all these chemicals to make it produce faster, and then putting more chemicals on the yield, and then and then people are sick, and we live in a sick care system instead of a health care, well care, and it just cycles out.
All you really need to do is go out into a lake with a canoe in a storm to realize we can't beat nature.
Right.
We cannot control nature. Nature is much bigger and more powerful than any of us. And so like you were saying, in that conventional system, it is about controlling. It's about controlling that environment. It's about sterilizing and putting in,
Yes.
and you have no control. Ultimately, that's futile. When you let go and you realize, actually, nature is really powerful, you start getting the benefit of nature working for you because you're utilizing the soil health principles. You're understanding how nature works and you're working within that system. It's like, I have kiddos in a family, and if I clean my house by myself, it's an arduous task. But if I give everybody something to do, I turn around and it's all done. I mean, I've been working, but they've all been working. And that's what happens when you unlock the power of regenerative agriculture. Is nature is contributing so much to build up that function and help you succeed. But you can't fight with it. You can't go against it.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to get my kids to clean their room if I don't approach it the right way.
This is true. This is very true. Yes. So what if there's, let's say, a new mom, and you know what new motherhood is like?
Yes.
What can they do? What can just your average working mom, or even a mom who's stayed home, what can they do to contribute to the betterment of the food that is landing on their table and in their children's bodies?
Yeah, I think the first part is be curious, be interested, and learn. There's so much in our food system is incredibly complex, but chunking it down and being curious enough and taking the time to say, oh, well, I wonder what that means or where that came from. And so really thinking about, first of all, thinking about simplicity of ingredients. How do you simplify down to get real ingredients in the food that you're choosing for your family? And then when you look at it, the next level is saying, okay, well, where are these ingredients coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because we actually have so much opportunity to vote with our fork. As consumers, yes, we're choosing the future of the world because we live in a capitalist society, and where the money is where businesses are going to go. So when we make a commitment, and it doesn't matter where you're at or what level you're at, it can be that there's one area or one ingredient that you've learned about that you're like, you know what, I'm really going to pay attention to where my meat comes from, because this is something I've learned enough about that I know this is important. So maybe we're going to eat less meat, but we're going to choose higher quality meat, and we're going to buy it from a regenerative farm, and go out and find a regenerative farm that you can purchase it through. Maybe a local co-op, maybe you find something online and you can have it delivered to your doorstep. You don't have to change it all at once, but if you just start by learning and start by looking at the things that matter to you most, you can have a significant impact, and that can grow over time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you can just kind of bite it down into smaller chunks.
Yeah. I love that. That's so helpful, because one of the things that I know in my years of working with families, especially moms, is the question is, where do I start?
Mm-hmm.
What do I do? I want to do all these things, but where do I start? So
Yeah.
I mean, even if you grow microgreens on your windowsill, or you have a box where you regenerate the soil. I find it really curious that Bill Gates bought up so much farmland, and he's so genetically modified inspired. And you talked about the microbiome, and the two are like...
Absolutely. There's a movie came out in 2019 called Kiss the Ground.
Oh, yes.
It's readily available. You'll find it on Netflix, I think, right now. You can also watch it on their website, the Kiss the Ground website. And then there's another movie that's coming out. It's in previews right now, nationwide, but in the fall, it's going to be available on live streaming. I don't know the platform yet or the date, but it's called Common Ground.
Oh, isn't that already out?
It's out. It's available. You'll see it in you'll see a lot of previews happening in different areas. It's been in Denver, where I live, about 3 or 4 times now. So you'll see it in different places, but you can't just go online and watch it right now.
Okay.
So you have to look for a place to find it. But if you go to Common Ground's website, you'll see where they're previewing it right now, where it's available. And it's been moving around quite a bit. So there's been a lot of visibility to it, but it will be in live stream to sit in your living room and watch it at home very soon. Yeah. And
yeah.
movies like that really, Common Ground has done a good job looking at what's happening across the food system and bringing kind of a global perspective to understanding where are we and how did we get here and why is it important to even think about where your food comes from. It's now that knowledge is available.
Yes.
With very little effort or energy to get started in that journey of learning. There's another one called Root So Deep that's available for live streaming. It takes more of a farmer-centric perspective, but it shows you more boots on the ground, what happens on a regenerative farm when a farm is practicing. And so what are those outcomes? So there are some good, fun ways to learn about this that are, documentary style, bringing the knowledge to you where you're at. And then there's also conversations with farmers, getting out to a farmer's market and talking with farmers, like I said, looking for that seal, going online and doing some research. There's some really fun videos on YouTube. One is called I Sell Water and Sunshine. And Doug Peterson, our lead verifier and chief scientist at Regenified, that was maybe a decade, maybe 15 years ago, a video recorded of him talking about transitioning to regenerative agriculture. But there's so much, that's the one thing that is maybe on one hand exciting and on the other hand overwhelming, is there's so many places to get information.
Yes, thankfully there are a lot of sources to go to get information that you might not get if you're of a particular mindset, because as you know, it's a different philosophy, it's a different approach. And Common Ground is actually, I went to a screening and that's actually where I met Gabe. And it's a terrific film, and I highly recommended it and recommend. And thank you for these other referrals, because it's really important for people to feel like they can go places and receive the information. That touchstone of somebody has to hear it 7 times. I heard something recently, someone said they've got to hear something 21 times. And I went, wow, okay. All right. So let's just see if is there anything else that you would like to share about Regenified and its impact on regenerative agriculture for people?
I think, our goal at Regenified is to create transparency across the food system. True regeneration is additive at every single layer. It's never extractive of anything within the ecosystem it functions within. So at the farm level, regenerative agriculture benefits the farmers and makes their livelihood stronger. It creates more resilience in their land so they can withstand crazy weather patterns. If there's extreme amounts of rain, if there's extreme drought, they're in a better position to handle that when they have functioning ecosystems in their land. Lots of aggregate means that they can hold more water in that soil for long periods of time of drought. Better aggregate can also make sure that if there's severe rainstorms, they're able to infiltrate that water into their land rather than having it run off into the waterways. And so either way, the answer is regenerative agriculture, but that's just the farm level. You take that product through the entire supply chain. And like I said, when I was saying earlier, it starts with life in the soil and it moves to life above the soil. So regenerative agriculture is about building soil health and life in the soil to impact life above the soil. And so you start seeing that move above the soil with more plant growth, better plant growth on the farm. You start seeing influx of birds and bugs. You start seeing more people being able to support livelihoods in rural communities, and you see rural communities thriving. You see those products that are coming off the farm going into cities having 30 to 50% more nutrients than conventionally grown products. And now you start seeing how that health of the soil is starting to influence health of our communities.
Yeah.
Right. This is the additive value. This is the additive power of regenerative agriculture. And Regenified is here to enable all of that. How do we support and facilitate and bring that knowledge and bring transparency across the supply chain so that additive value can be found at every single stage, from the farm to the consumer who's eating the food, so it can make everybody's life better.
It's wonderful. Really wonderful. It's great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for doing this work.
Yeah, it's very rewarding. I mean, and I get a chance to talk to farmers all of the time, and they're some of the best people you've ever met in your life. They just honestly want to do the right thing, and they want to, be able to grow healthy food and great food for people.
That's wonderful. Well, I half jokingly said to Gabe that I think farmers are the new rock stars.
They need to be.
Right?
They need to be. That's actually part of my mission.
Given where we're at as a society, I think that doing regenerative farming and having a system like Regenified that allows people to trust that the food that's on their table and going into their bodies and their kids' bodies is really been verified.
Yeah.
As healthy will bring a healthy microbiome and create all sorts of clear thinking instead of foggy thinking within the kids, and reduce the amount of processed quality food that has no nutritive value.
Absolutely. And I'm not thinking of the exact statistic right now. So I'm going to butcher this, but I'll give you some concept of it. And folks, listeners can Google. But we spend, I think it's like 1 something trillion a year on food. And we're spending more than that on healthcare. And so it's that food that's creating those, those lower quality food choices, devoid of nutrients, filled with fillers, that's actually contributing to the healthcare crisis. And it's like a 1.7 trillion on the healthcare side, I think, is the statistics that's like jumping in my mind, but I don't know if that's exactly what it is. But it's more than we're spending on the food, and that's the exact cost of healthcare as a repercussion of the poor food choices. So we can switch all of that, right? We have the power to change that by choosing real food grown in a regenerative practice and just starting to swap out, trade up, find one thing that you're passionate about, one thing you want to learn a little bit more about. If you love grains, if you love meat, if you love vegetables, find that one footing, learn a little bit more about it and find a source for it. Find a higher quality source from a regenerative farm, and just start building that in your life. Each step we take, each bite that we take makes a difference. And know that there are millions of people who are taking this step with you as a consumer to make these products more available. The more they become available, the more approachable they'll become. We can change this crisis.
That's wonderful. I love how you said that. Find what you love and do that research. Find out where it comes from. Build upon it, rather than just accept, with apathy. Well, there's really not a lot I can do, or it's so expensive. And I often counter when people will say it's so expensive to eat organic or non-GMO, and I will say, well, pay now or pay later.
Right. I always say this is my healthcare.
Right.
The other stuff is there if for an emergency.
Yes.
I hope to never need it.
Yes.
This is what I'm doing as my own healthcare plan so that I can feel great up until the very end. I'm looking for compressed morbidity.
I like that. Yeah. Well, it's wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. How can people find you if they have more questions?
Yeah, I would say check us out at regenified.com. So www.regenified.com. We have some information available on our website right now, but that will continue to grow. We're also on social media, so you can find us on LinkedIn. You'll find us on Instagram and on Facebook, sharing some stories about the farmers we're working with and the brands that are making commitments to regenerative agriculture. And you'll find me on those platforms as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your wisdom and for this work that you do to help all of us. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. It was great to join you today.
Thank you. My pleasure. All right. So I'm going to take you off the screen for a sec. All right, everyone. Well, this has been a deep dive into regenerative farming. If you have any questions, please make sure to contact the individual people, or you can contact us, and we will provide you with contacts and referrals, and we are here to help you thrive. So until we meet next time, know that you are powerful beyond measure, love beyond description, and a force for good in the world. So go forth and spread your love. We will see you soon. Peace and blessings.